American people do not want wars because the promise of anti-war has been used again and again by American presidents to win elections. Yet, once in power, the same playbook of destructions, regime change, and demolition of other people's countries is followed by them. President Trump had raised huge hopes by pointing out that he was a rare US president who did not start a new war, and he wants to be remembered as a person of peace. Yet, the Israel Iran war that he started was the most feared war which was being avoided for decades. Though a ceasefire has been declared, a very precarious, fragile situation has got created for both Israel and Iran. Why do American presidents do it again and again, spending trillions of dollars of their voters' money? How much is the Democratic Party also responsible for these destructions? And what does this precarious situation mean for the future? To talk more on this, we have with us today a very special guest, American politician Geoffrey Young. Geoffrey had contested the 2024 US general elections in the Democratic primaries from Kentucky. And in 2022, he had won the Democratic primaries for the US Congress race from Kentucky's 6th district. Hello, all of you, and welcome to another episode of Jaya Talk Show. America has spent $4 to $6 trillion in the war against Iraq. It spent another $2 trillion in its war against Afghanistan, and this is just two of the wars. Would you say that the Democratic Party that you belong to has been a bigger warmonger? Why was President Trump not willing to do that?
Maybe he has a bit of sanity left.
So you would give credit to President Trump for having a better sense than his predecessors?
In the cases of Ukraine and Iran, he might have a tiny bit more common sense than his predecessors, yeah.
Do you support their policies of the oppression that they do within their country, especially the
It's
oppression?
none of my business.
Do you think there has been a paradigm shift in the Middle East just because of this war? Because for the first time in Israel's history in the 70 years, Israel has been bombed to this extent relentlessly. You have heard that there has been people in the Mossad who have called people's mobile phones in Iran, top generals, and threatened their families.
Right.
Over time, do you think such threatening and such covert measures would actually bring it down slowly so that the regime change can be possible?
The military-industrial complex thrives when there is tension and conflict, war in the world.
Hello, Jeff. Wonderful to have you again on my show, and thanks for making the time.
Thank you.
I'll start with a question which would give you a context to the audience about you. You have been a long-term American politician, and you are a Jewish politician, Jewish American politician with a staunch Jewish upbringing. Yet for decades, you have been criticizing Israel on many fronts and Israel's policies. So why have you been criticizing Israel for decades, being a Jew yourself?
Zionism and Judaism have always been very different, two different things. And so as a Jew, I went to Hebrew school as a child. And what I learned about the Holocaust was never again for anyone. Didn't mean just never again for the Jewish people. I mean, it meant no more genocide for anybody. And Zionism came along and ended up practicing genocide against the Palestinians. And so I would say that, I would say that Zionism and Judaism, the ethical religion, are actually enemies. And that I've been an anti-Zionist Jew since 1976.
I have seen in one of your interviews, you said that you were influenced by Mahatma Gandhi's writings on changing your mind against Israel and against the Zionist movement. Would you like to say something about it?
Well, against war. Gandhi was incredibly effective at nonviolent action, freed, with the help of millions of other Indians, helped free India from colonialism, very violent, uh, murderous uh, example of colonialism. So I wanted to be like Gandhi.
Okay, I'll come to what happened just now with this war. Do you think, if we leave out the emotions, there was actually a merit, a justification for Israel to attack Iran first after the IAEA report, which showed that Iran has enriched its uranium to 60%, and going from 60% to 90% to make a full-fledged nuclear bomb is quite easy. So there was actually a threat perception, and Israel couldn't take a risk and had to attack Iran to stop them from creating that bomb to attack Israel.
No, I think there was no justification whatsoever. Article 2 of the UN Charter prohibits aggression. Other articles say that military force may be used if a country is in imminent danger of being attacked or invaded by another country. And but even in those cases, the country defending itself from an imminent attack has to go to the UN and get report to the UN on the facts. The UN Security Council is supposed to investigate the situation. Israel never does that. The United States never does that. Uh, so so Israel and
So that would have been a long drawn
Washington's
process.
attack
That would
on
have been a long drawn process to go to the UN and get their to get their support on this. But
yeah,
Israel couldn't have waited that long because the threat was quite imminent. Do you think that's a fair
no,
point?
the threat was not imminent at all. Even American intelligence agencies assessed that Iran did not have a nuclear weapons program, did not have any nuclear weapons, and that Israel was lying as it always does. So there
But it
was
was
no
capable
imminent
of
threat
making it.
that
It
would
didn't
have
have it, but it,
justified any military action by Israel or the United States. It was pure, naked aggression, which is the supreme international crime. According to the judgment at Nuremberg, 1946, after World War II, that judgment said that aggression is the supreme international crime that contains within itself all of the evils of all the other crimes. And Israel and the United States have been guilty of aggression many times since the end of World War II.
okay. So you think there was no justification at all, and
None,
it's not legal at all. Uh,
none, not legal.
okay, I'll come to the next question to you as a US politician. So America has spent $4 to $6 trillion in the war against Iraq. It spent another $2 trillion in its war against Afghanistan, and this is just two of the wars.
Right?
This money could surely have been put to better use by trying to bring manufacturing into the country, try to create jobs, or trying to bring healthcare, etc.
Hmm.
But and on top of that, you have created a lot of enemies in the world. So help us understand, in any way, do these wars help America be more safe or be more powerful? Or why do US presidents again and again embark on this? And what drives them to go to these wars and spend this money?
Well, every one of the wars that the United States has engaged in since 1945 has weakened the United States, has distorted our economy toward weapons and away from constructive investments, manufacturing, and all kinds of public goods, education, taking money from healthcare. And I guess even before 1967, before age 10, I was upset by how much money the United States government wastes on so-called defense. So I've been in favor of cutting the military
So what actually is
war
the driver
budget
behind
since,
going for these wars?
for the last 50 years. I've always supported cutting the military budget and increasing spending on social programs.
So what is actually the driver behind going for these wars by the US presidents? What drives them to do it?
Corporate capitalism,
So can you
the
explain it a little bit
military,
more how it benefits them?
the military industrial complex thrives when there is tension and conflict, war in the world. Weapons manufacturers pretty much own every member of the U.S. House and Senate. They need money to be elected and reelected, and I'd say the military industrial intelligence complex pretty much runs this country.
So is it
Neocons is another word for them. So the Congress is just puppets right now. They dance to the tune of the highest bidder.
so are you saying that there's just a deep state that is running America and the politicians who are elected have very little power?
Yes, I'm saying that because they're so fearful about, having an opponent who might beat them, in the next primary or the next general election. They're running scared. I think maybe Thomas Massey in Northern Kentucky, U.S. representative, is an exception, that he doesn't seem to be worried about primary challengers. He's close to his own constituents and represents them very well, but there aren't very many congressmen with the courage that Thomas Massey has.
So if I look at your own Democratic Party itself, President Obama had come by criticizing hugely the Iraq war, and then he went on to destroy Libya and Syria, turn them into basket cases, and then fully functional countries, and then put in the most radical, religious, fanatic leaders on top of them. President Biden, after the October 7th, has sent about 14,000 of the 2,000-pound bombs to Israel to bomb Gaza, which is just about a 40-kilometer lengthwise and 7 kilometers breadthwise. So, would you say that the Democratic Party that you belong to has been a bigger warmonger?
Both major parties since 1945 have been pro-war, pro-aggression, pro-terrorism. I think there's very little difference between the two parties. I'm not a Democrat anymore. No, in November of last year, 2024, some friends and I formed a new party called the Kentucky Party. I guess you
Okay.
could call it a third party in Kentucky. And the principles of it are pro-peace and fighting against corruption. That's pretty much our whole platform. And so I left my lifetime party last November, never to return.
Okay, and so you would think that your party has been equally responsible for the wars and the destructions that have happened
All
in
of
the world.
them, yes.
And would you say that in effect, all this money spent, all the wars have not brought any further safety to America or any bigger power to America in any way?
They've made Americans much more unsafe. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say at this point of the world's, let's say 8.2 billion people, um, 7 billion of them oppose the United States' aggressive war-like foreign policies, or don't care about the US at all, perhaps 1 billion are still kind of sympathetic toward the United States. For example, most of Western Europe appears to be still loyal puppets. For example, in Ukraine, which was another war of aggression
We
by the
will come
United States
to
against
Ukraine
Russia.
in another topic. We'll stick to the Israel-Iran now. Ukraine is another big, huge topic itself.
Yeah,
Uh,
that they're all related.
yeah.
It's all the it's part of the decay and decline of the United States military empire. And I think that process has become irreversible now. There's no way to stop it.
So this current war, do you think there has been a paradigm shift in the Middle East just because of this war? Because for the first time in Israel's history in the 70 years, Israel has been bombed to this extent relentlessly, and a red line has been crossed, which was thought to never be crossed by Iran without facing a huge consequence out of it. So now it becomes a fair game to actually strike Israel again, and the Western countries or other countries may not be able to stop it. So, in effect, it makes Israel a much more unsafer place now than it was before the war. Would you think a huge
Yes,
shift has
yes.
happened?
And tens of thousands of Israelis are leaving. Um, I don't think the Zionist government of Israel has very much longer to survive. You know, even with a ceasefire or whatever.
What do you mean
Um,
when you say that?
I think that the country is collapsing economically. Its military has been shown to be very vulnerable. As you said, Iran can hit Israeli military targets at will. And I don't see any way for the Zionist government to survive much longer. It may take 5 years before it disappears and is replaced by the state of Palestine, run by Palestinians. Uh, it may
So are you
take only
saying
a year.
Israel could get destroyed in 5 years? Is that what you're saying? I'm
Yeah,
not saying.
yeah.
Is that what is your
The
opinion?
government, not
You
all
mean
the Jewish.
Netanyahu's government or the state of Israel?
uh, Certainly, the Likud government will disappear. Will be defeated. There'll probably be a civil war in Israel among the various faction of Zionists, and the IDF is going to be shown to be impotent. Uh, Iran today could cut off all the oil coming into Israel, and that would quickly lead to the collapse of the government. So, yeah, Israel has gotten itself into a position where it can't win. Iran is 90 million people, a huge country. There's no way Israel or even Israel and the United States could defeat Iran without launching a nuclear war that could become a worldwide conflagration and wipe out humanity. And I don't think even Donald Trump wants to see that happen. So I think Iran, the axis of resistance in the Middle East, have won or are about to win. And I
Uh,
think it's a good thing. I think Zionism, the ideology,
do
should
you
go the way of Nazism, and become an ideology that is universally shunned.
do you think the ideology of Iran is also any better? Because they are much more regressive, they are much more oppressive of their citizens, of their women. Don't you think that is a bigger, a worse state to be in than a democratic country than is like Israel?
No, Israel is not a democracy. never has
They
been.
have votes, and he's elected. Their leaders are
Yeah,
elected.
dictatorships hold votes. They're fake votes, fake elections. Israel has never let the Palestinians, in the occupied territories have any rights at all. So Israel's not a democracy, never has been. Um, Iran, uh,
Iran is not a
the
democracy
current
either.
Islamic government of Iran is extremely popular after Israel's attacks. People have rallied behind the government,
But do you
and
support their policies of the oppression that they do within their country, especially the
it's none of
oppression
my
of their women?
business. None of my business.
So you,
Other countries can do what they want internally, domestically. And as an American, I have nothing to say about allegations of unequal rights for women in Iran. I think it's incredibly hypocritical for any American to criticize some enemy, official enemy of Washington, because Washington is the aggressor, and aggressors have no rights.
hmm,
Occupiers have no rights. So you know, Israel's constantly criticizing the Palestinian, Hamas and the PLO and all these other resistance movements for being so-called undemocratic. Um, Israel is worse. They have kept the Palestinian people oppressed and essentially living in concentration camps. Gaza is a huge concentration camp, which Israel occasionally bombs and attacks innocent civilians. Israel has no moral standing to criticize anybody.
hmm. So what do you think was at all achieved through this war? Because the war was started by Israel. Do you see they have achieved anything at all in terms of their safety, in terms of being able to stop Iran from acquiring a bomb or thinking about bombing Israel, or in terms of weakening Iran, or in terms of having any thoughts of a regime change, etc.? Do you think Israel has achieved anything out of this war, Israel and America?
I think Israel and America have both failed in all their objectives. I don't think Iran wants a nuclear weapon. They can defeat Israel in 5 or 10 years without any nuclear weapons. They can simply fire 20 or 30 missiles at Israel military facilities a couple times a week, and Israel won't be able to defend itself or survive for very long. So Iran, as the attacked victim, uh, has the right to continue to fire missiles at Israel until the Israeli government is gone.
Uh, so, what do you think was Israel's plan when it started their attack, their strikes on Iran? What did they expect to achieve out of it?
The only thing he wanted was the United States to um, join with him in a full-scale war against Iran. And it looks to me like President Trump is not willing to do that. So that was Israel's objective, and it
Why
has
was
not
he not?
succeeded.
Why was President Trump not willing to do that?
Maybe he has a bit of sanity left. He
Okay, so you're
realizes that if the United States were to launch a full-scale assault, including perhaps ground troops, uh, that Iran would close the Straits of Hormuz, the price of oil would skyrocket, the world economy would be damaged severely, and his own presidency would go down in flames.
So, do you think that President Trump has a bigger sanity than the previous presidents who actually went on a full-fledged war? So, you would give credit to President Trump for having a better sense than his predecessors.
In the cases of Ukraine and Iran, he might have a tiny bit more common sense than his predecessors. Yeah.
Uh, America has been openly threatening assassination of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, and doing a regime change. They have watered it down a little bit now, but do you think in the long run they would actually be doing a regime change, just as they did in Syria, not immediately, but over a 10 years period, they slowly crippled Syria and did a regime change? Do you think they could do that to Iran, and what could that mean for the people of Iran?
Well, I don't think they can do it unless they drop a nuclear bomb, in which case anything can happen. I don't think the United States and Israel together are capable of um, causing the Islamic Republic of Iran to fall. I think they can, if they are foolish enough and reckless enough, they could assassinate the current um, Ayatollah, but he'll be replaced, and the Iranian people will be more and more determined and united to resist US aggression.
But
So
you
I
must have.
think this current Ayatollah could be assassinated. That seems to be something the Israelis and the Americans are very good at, but it won't defeat the Islamic government.
But you have heard that there has been people in the Mossad who have called people's mobile phones in Iran top
Mhm.
generals and
Yeah,
threatened their families. Over
right.
time, do you think such threatening and such covert measures could actually bring it down slowly so that the regime change can be possible? Do you think it is a possibility?
I think well, maybe a 1% possibility. I think it will make the Iranian people more determined to resist being conquered.
Hmm.
And that 10 years from now, the government of Israel won't exist, but the Islamic Republic of Iran will exist.
Now, this particular war, there was a lot of backlash against going on war against Iran, and not just from Democratic Party, but hugely from the Republican Party and from the MAGA crowd, from the very right-wing MAGA crowd as well. So there was, as you mentioned, Thomas Massey, who introduced a bipartisan war powers resolution to prohibit America from going to war, and Steve Bannon, who said that allowing the deep state to drive the US into a war with Iran would blow up the coalition of Trump supporters, which is about talking about leaving the Trump supporting altogether. And of course, there's Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both MAGA people who uh, hugely spoke against the war. And then there is Bernie Sanders, who introduced a bill to prohibit the use of federal funds for any US military action against Iran. So, do you think that these have had an effect in creating this ceasefire, or do you think it was more token and basically there was something else that drove the ceasefire to happen now?
I think the vocal opposition of Republicans and some Democrats, I guess Bernie Sanders is an independent, had an effect on stopping a full-scale attack by the United States. Uh, I think the bombing that did occur in three sites in Iran had very little effect. I think most of the targets, most of the important equipment and people in those three targets had already been moved somewhere else. And so, as I mentioned, the Iranian response was similarly uh, mainly a demonstration. So, yeah, I think a combination of the factors on the ground and in the air, and some voices of opposition in Washington, all contributed to the current ceasefire.
So, do you think that such opposition in future could actually stop America from going to war and doing this cycle of things that it has been doing for all this time? Uh,
Mhm.
do you think a bigger weight is coming from different people to stop America from going to war, which would happen in future, which would stop the world seeing so many of these unnecessary wars happening in future?
Yes, I do think that.
So, do you see a clear shift?
Especially young people are more and more anti-war. They see no benefit from, you know, just having Washington be able to decide who is going to run Ukraine. Most Americans couldn't care less. And so I see that anti-war sentiment increasing, actually faster than I thought it would. So I'm pretty optimistic that the peace movement can eventually prevail. We have a long way to go, but I think we can take power.
Right. So you think that there is a huge shift in America itself, which could actually make a turn in the world in the way the have been happening for the past few decades.
I think it's possible. I have no way to know how likely that is, but yeah, I think it's a real possibility. The American people are creative and resourceful, and when they understand what the problem is, we can work together effectively to solve it. I blame the media, the corporate mainstream media, for a lot of the problems in this country. So media reform or freeing the internet from censorship will be an important part of progress in the future.
Hmm. Uh, so one more thing is this war, do you think it has also been successful in taking the attention away from Gaza, where people have been dying at the same time? Children queuing up to get food have been dying, but the news hasn't come up to people's attention because the focus was entirely on the Israeli-Iran war. And there was one thing, there was a free pass to do a lot more atrocities in Gaza. And secondly, do you think Iran also, who has been the primary fighter for the Palestinian cause against Israel, would also get complacent after this war with a relief of their ceasefire and take their attention away from Gaza?
Not at all. The war hasn't stopped. Iran is still at war with the United States and at war with Israel. And so that war may go on for 5, 10, 15 more years. Hasn't stopped. There's been a little pause. And so one of Iran's main objectives is to get rid of, force the United States military bases and troops and weapons and missiles out of the greater Middle East. I think they're going to someday, sooner or later, they're going to succeed in that goal. But they're not going to be distracted or forget that goal, that they're going to keep working on it until they win.
Right. Uh, Last question. The bloodshed in the Middle East has continued for the last 70 years. Uh, Primarily around the Palestinian cause, about 4 or 5 million Palestinian people. They live currently in a way that there is no safety, no rights for them, and there is no plan to bring any rights for them in the future or any particular land for them where they can live in safety and with self determination. What do you think? And we have been talking about one state, two state for a long time. Nothing exactly happened. What do you think could be a practical solution that can be implemented? And who do you think can implement it? Who would be motivated enough to implement it and see it through?
All right. Well, I used to think there were two solutions, the one state solution, in which the Palestinians would control all of historic Palestine, and the two-state solution, which would be the the redivision of Palestine into Israel and new state of Palestine, mainly located in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem. I now think the two-state solution is not possible. So the solution I see now is the one-state solution, where the Zionist government of Israel disappears. Maybe maybe the government of Palestine makes Zionism illegal, just like Russia is trying to do with with the Nazis in Ukraine. They're trying to denazify Ukraine. Maybe is Palestine will become de-Zionized. I
When
think
you mean
that's
say
the only solution.
de-Zionize,
And who can do it? Um, I read or listen to a lot of Shahid Bolson's commentary on current events. I don't know if you've heard of him, but uh, he talks about the owners and controllers of globalized financial capital, the OCGFC. And they still have a tremendous amount of influence over world events. Um, they're basically all the billionaires in the world, and they have come to believe, I think, the majority of them, that the Zionist government is not a good business risk. It's not good for business. That's what they're interested in. So they are promoting things like the Abraham Accords and all that. And I think they've decided that the Zionist government has to go and be replaced by a Palestinian state. Otherwise, they will not have access to the global South. The global South is strongly behind the Palestinian people. And if,
the Abraham Accord actually included Israel, isn't it, when it was signed?
yeah, it did. That's right. But yeah, and so if it is implemented in the future, it could include a whole bunch of Jewish Israelis, American Jews, all kinds of people. But they just wouldn't control the government in Palestine. That's all. They'd be operating businesses there. The Gulf monarchies would be, China would be making investments in Palestine, and it would become integrated into the region. But Zionism would be gone.
Finally, last question. Where do you see this going from here in terms of the Middle East and in terms of peace at all happening within our lifetime?
I'm very encouraged by the rise of BRICS, other multipolar organizations, countries. I think it's a tremendous wave of an alternative to the unipolar system that the United States somehow managed to maintain from 1946 to, I don't know, to 10 years ago when BRICS started rising. Uh, I see the United States, I see NATO disappearing very soon. Probably the most violent, aggressive military alliance in the history of the world. I see that going away. I see the military power of the United States being eroded away because we can't afford it. And so I'm very encouraged by what Russia, China, Iran, other countries are doing to create a more socialist world. Although, Russia is a capitalist country, but a world where the very richest people don't rule, don't control everything.
That's not really true about Russia and China. That's not really true because they have actually got an autocracy where perhaps the richest person in the world is Vladimir Putin.
No,
And
that's nonsense. No way.
so
It's
there
probably
is
Elon Musk.
we don't know, but he is definitely one of the richest persons in the world. But at the same time, with the failings of America, a democracy is definitely a better way than the autocracies that exist in Russia and China, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not autocracies.
Okay, let's agree to disagree on that. Uh,
Fine. I do
right.
that all the time.
Yeah, that is democracy. So yeah, let's do that. But thank you very much, Jeffrey, for coming. Always a great pleasure to hear you and your thoughts and your pro-peace agenda that you have always driven, and your thoughts on a new party to make that work. I hope you do really well in that, and it actually progresses peace in your country. Thanks a lot
Thank
for
you,
joining.
Jaya.